Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 7, Episode 24, The Dogs of War. This episode aired May 26th, 1999. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's episode?
No, it was perfect.
Of course. What was it called?
Sloane's Brain.
Sloane's Brain. It was actually called Extreme Measures.
I think my name's better.
I agree.
I do have some comments, though.
Okay.
Something we didn't talk about in the episode. I think there's a big difference between Section 31 and the other deep cover secret intelligence services.
Mm-hmm.
Taking Garak, Tain, or the Tal Shiar as examples. I think to be sure that they got rid of the cure and the person who created it, either of those agencies would just destroy the whole of Deep Space Nine to be sure. And I think that's the difference with Section 31. They were prepared to go and do a surgical strike, as it were, to remove Julian or destroy the cure. Whereas the others, I think, would go for scorched earth.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And we talked a lot about computer networks in the first couple of seasons, and we haven't talked about them in a while, but that's not really how it works. Once something is on a computer, it's not likely just on the one computer.
No, you put it on one data tape, and then that's it.
Okay. And all the backups are on the station.
Correct. Yeah.
No, I agree. And I wondered if it was because it's a very small organization, it seems.
Yes.
And there aren't like hundreds or thousands of people a part of it. And so they have to do surgical strikes.
Yeah.
And additionally, they're trying to stay hidden. They don't want big flashy things to happen. And maybe Sloane went to the station to see how big of a reaction he needed to have.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
that was the surgical part was
Gauge
I'm going to look into it and figure out how big the problem is.
Yeah.
And then I'll figure out what to do. But I also think the real arrogance of this guy is he thinks he has control over Julian.
Oh, yes, that's true.
So I think he really felt like he was going to talk Julian into something when he got there.
Oh, okay.
And if he truly is augmented like Julian, he maybe doesn't want to just kill Julian.
Oh,
he wants to get Julian on his side because he's one of his people.
Julian just needs to be convinced.
Right.
Interesting.
I headcanoned your headcanon.
That's pretty good. I like that one.
Thank you. Was last week's episode also the one where you said Pookie's been fed?
Yes, it was. Do you want to bring that up?
I mean, no one's going to understand that reference except our closest friends. And it's something we have to tell each other all the time because Pookie is the cat that will eat until she pops.
Yes.
And so we have to make sure she doesn't get fed multiple times.
Yeah, she likes her food.
We thought it was hilarious, but it won't make sense to most people.
Yeah, and it is the kind of thing we text each other.
You gotta be careful. That little cat will eat and eat and eat. All right, well, this week, The Dogs of War, the penultimate episode.
Oh, yeah, we only have one more to go.
I know, it's crazy. Well, we've prattled along enough. Are you ready to get started?
I think I am. So, into the episode. We open on an outside view of this beautiful space station and into ops where Miles is informing Sisko they're running a little late. Sisko seems a little irritated by this, and then we go to Julian, who says hi to Ezri in a very awkward way. And Ezri asks how Odo is doing, and we learn Odo is recovering, and they're just very awkward together.
Yawn.
I think it's because the writers maybe never got past high school relationships.
Boring.
Worf and Miles are watching this interaction, and Worf tells Miles he is an overgrown child, and she is very confused.
He's not wrong.
Miles just shrugs and says, it could still work.
God.
I'm going to bring this up. That makes things seem really creepy on Julian's part here.
Yeah.
If she's confused about her feelings and about the integration of all these personalities, she's still in that point because she hasn't had the training or the experience. Does that seem like he's taking advantage of her in this state?
Well, how on brand for Bashir is that?
That's true, he does date patients.
The most unethical dating history of any doctor, and no one does anything about it.
Well, fortunately to save us from this, there's some beeping and Mars reports she's here. And we see on screen the Defiant, or at least a Defiant-class ship. Which I really hope, thinking about it, I really hope they included all of Miles's upgrades and tweaks.
Oh, I have that question in my notes. That is on my list of questions. Does this have all of the stuff that Miles did? Or he might, I think, just be excited to put them all on again.
Oh, I could see Miles really enjoying that.
He's a tinkerer.
Yeah, they didn't go enough into the ship here.
Now, I didn't know this was coming, so realistically, we only went a couple of episodes without it, so it's not as traumatic as I first thought.
Plus, most importantly, from a production standpoint, you don't have to pay for new models.
Absolutely.
We go on board the new ship, which we learn is the USS Sao Paulo, and Admiral Ross is turning over command to Sisko. Before he leaves, Ross tells Sisko there's something else on the datapad, and a beaming Sisko reads the special dispensation to change the name of the ship to the Defiant.
But you got a plaque. Now you're going to have to get a different plaque. Why didn't you just do it when it was in space dock?
Also, as he's leaving, Ross asks, so you wouldn't happen to have seen Sloane around, would you? No one knows where he's gotten to.
Yeah. See previous episode where I'm like, does nobody care? The guy's dead. And we're all like, fine with it. No big deal. We'll just cover it up. No biggie. He deserved it.
That didn't happen, but I thought that would be funny.
No. We do hear here that Ross is a vice admiral. Did we know that?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. Janeway's title, right? In Prodigy?
Yeah. Miles now informs us that the Breen will have a surprise when they try to use their energy dampening weapons on this, and Worf says that the shield generators have been completely reconfigured. So it appears that Starfleet has figured out how to defeat the dampening weapon.
And why does Worf seem cranky about that? He's like, ugh, everything is different. What's your problem, dude?
Worf likes consistency. It fits with Worf's character. He likes things to be the way they are.
Oh, and that was his car that he slept in. I forgot.
Oh, yeah, they blew up his van.
Right.
Worf and Miles head off to look at the upgrades. Julian goes off to sickbay, and Ezri tells Sisko, she'll let you two, meaning the ship, get acquainted. Sisko, now alone on the bridge, sits in the captain's chair and looking around says, hello, ship. I really like that.
I think he should have said, like, hello, friend, or old friend, or something. My favorite toy, something like that.
Yeah, he was absolutely beaming. He was definitely enjoying it. He was
very happy.
As much as I love the Defiant, I have some alternative names for the ship.
Okay.
Hammer of the Emissary.
Okay, that's a good one.
Wrath of the Prophets.
It's too long.
Oh. And my final one, Fury of the Gods.
Maybe just Fury. Well, I don't think they would put emissary, prophets, or gods into the name because that's all that stuff they want Sisko to not be a part of. But he can call it whatever he wants. Just put up a new plaque.
Exactly. He's got the dispensation. Yeah, you said Defiant, but we decided something else.
Yeah, we picked something different.
Worf's ban.
Yeah.
Next, off to a Jem'Hadar fighter, and we get an orbital view of Cardassia. A beaming Garak reports, it's as beautiful as I remember. Kira tells Damar it's a big risk coming here, and he tells her that Gul Ravok and Legate Goris are ready to bring their troops over to his side. It's worth the risk. They're cleared for transport, and Kira, Garak, and Damar all head down to the planet. Soon as they arrive, there is shouting, and we can hear a gunfight going on, there are bodies on the ground, and we see a Jem'Hadar shoot a fleeing Cardassian in the back. Watching all of this from a ledge above, they see another Cardassian walk into the cave with a Vorta, and Damar tells them, Gul Ravok, he's betrayed us. Kira calls back to the ship, but Siskel, the guy who Damar left in charge, reports they are under attack, and the ship is getting beaten to hell. Roof booms are falling, NPCs are flying everywhere, so we know it's bad. We cut to an outside effect shot of two Breen and a Jem'Hadar fighter finishing off the damaged ship, and it just explodes.
Poor Siskel. He never stood a chance.
At least he got a few lines in the 10 seconds he was on screen.
True.
And we go into the opening titles. Back from the titles, and Kira is still calling to Siskel, but a very calm Garak tells her, I don't think they're up there anymore.
Oh.
I do like how Garak remains this complete flat level of calm. He doesn't seem to get worried or excited. I expect Garak is someone you really want in a stressful situation.
Sure.
Kira asks Damar if there's somewhere they can go, but everyone he knows has been arrested or killed. Fortunately, Garak knows someone that might take them in, and we see it's Mila, Enabran Tain's former housekeeper. She leads them into the basement to hide, and is quite dismissive of the other two, describing them as these people. She put some real disdain into the way she said that.
Yeah.
Garak is very apologetic, saying she's the only person on Cardassia he could trust. And she replies, well, don't blame me if you don't have any friends left. I do think Mila is used to speaking her mind.
Definitely. It's the same actress from The Young and the Restless from the last time we saw her. I thought maybe they might have recasted her, but it was the same one.
Garak tells the others how he grew up in this house. And Mila just comes straight out and tells them Enabran Tain was Garak's father.
Yep.
I guess that secret's not kept anymore.
Well, it doesn't matter.
Kira asks if she can get them a comms unit, and Mila tells Garak he shouldn't be involved in this.
Right.
Damar gives her his speech about freeing Cardassia from the Dominion, but she just tells him she's old and long past caring about such things. But she agrees to get the comms unit. Garak thanks her and promises they won't stay long. She does not seem very happy about Garak's companions at all. And I did like the little humor they put in this scene where she tells them they could make themselves useful. The basement hasn't been cleaned in years.
Yeah, and Kira picks up a cloth and throws it at Garak, right?
Oh, yeah. He holds it on the stairs saying, the glamour of being a revolutionary.
That's right.
Very theatrical.
Terrible news that you still have to dust with just a cloth in your hand 300 years in the future. Like they haven't invented an easier way to clean.
Very good point.
Well, I think Mila, she's just staying consistent, right? She's not going to like Bajorans, so she's got no interest in Kira.
Yeah.
And at this point, they also aren't going to have any interest in the Federation, so she's not going to be thrilled with that uniform that Kira's wearing.
Right.
And she knows with Damar that Garak has just brought trouble.
That's a good point.
It makes sense that she's like, why are you with these people?
Plus, I think she's always maybe seen Cardassian politics filtered through news from Enabran Tain, because she was his confidant as well.
Right, yeah.
So maybe she looks at that Cardassian military with the same contempt that Garak does.
Yeah, that thought all the Gulls were idiots. And
yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, good point.
Back to the station, and in sickbay, Julian is clearing Odo for duty. And then he has to tell him the horrible truth. He was deliberately infected by Section 31. Odo is a little annoyed by this, telling him, the Federation set out to destroy my people? Julian tries making the defense that Section 31 is a rogue organization, and Odo, quite rightly, replies, don't split hairs. They used me as an instrument to commit genocide.
Yep.
We may be at war with the Founders, but that's no excuse.
Right. They used you as a weapon without your permission.
I'm going to be honest here and say I think it's a pretty damn good excuse when you're dealing with mass murdering psychopaths. Odo asks, then what is the Federation going to do about it? And immediately we cut to Sisko in his office telling Odo the Federation Council considered giving the Founders the cure, but decided against it. Sisko actually looked kind of guilty telling Odo this. Like he should. Ashamed of the decision. We talk about things that are Star Trek and not Star Trek. This is the most non-Star Trek moment of Deep Space Nine. You have a cure for a genocidal weapon, and you're making the decision not to give it to the people that you infected with it.
Yeah. I mean, not doing anything about the virus is the same as causing it. When you've got the ability to stop it, and you also know that there was a rogue element within the Federation who did it,
right?
Then, yeah, you would think, as being part of Starfleet and being on the show Star Trek, that you would find that as an obligation to correct the problem.
I liken it almost to the point in Discovery where they have the ability to destroy the Klingon homeworld, and they're still trying to find a negotiated settlement.
Yeah, that makes more sense for sure.
Odo, who's really not happy with any of this, tells Sisko, then they're abetting genocide.
I mean, you're either outraged by the genocide plan or you're not.
Sisko tells Odo that, although he does not condone this, they started the war, and giving them a cure would just strengthen their hand. A frustrated Odo says, I can see there's no use in protesting. The decision has been made. As Odo goes to leave, Sisko asks, I need to know you won't take matters into your own hands. And Odo replies, he has his word. Odo then drops something of a truth bomb saying, The Federation claims to abhor Section 31's tactics, but when they need dirty work done, they look the other way. It's a tidy little arrangement, wouldn't you say?
Totally.
Sisko doesn't reply, and Odo just nods at him and leaves. I do feel here Sisko could reply. So when the Founders need to commit atrocities, they do it openly without any qualms. Is that a better solution?
Yeah, because they did it too.
If you're part of a genocidal, genetic manipulating race that sees no compunction about using any method to achieve effectively imperialist goals, then that's okay, as long as you do it out in the open.
Yeah.
I think part of me is really conflicted on this because I look at it like, there's the proverb, sow the wind, reap the whirlwind, famously used by Bomber Harris in World War II. I look at it almost like these are exactly the techniques you would use and not even think about it. And yet, somehow them being used against you is a bad thing. I guess this is Odo's perspective. And, Odo, at the end of the day, really does abhor killing.
Completely.
He's a changeling, but he's so different from the others.
Yeah, completely. Well, I think what's bothering me is we're not... It's kind of like how we started. We're not really being consistent in our own beliefs.
Yeah.
We're trying to have it both ways. We're trying to say Section 31 is terrible, genocide is terrible. Oh, but you know what? We might benefit from it in this situation. And that makes it really tough to swallow.
Yeah.
I agree that this would have been a great opportunity for Sisko to say, look, this is a technique that your people use to try to wipe out an entire planet.
Yeah.
So don't get on your high horse about it.
Right.
I do think that would have been an appropriate reaction. At the same time, Odo is under no obligation to do what Sisko says in this situation.
Oh, no.
He didn't need to agree. He didn't need to say, you have my word. And he doesn't need to keep that word because he's not in Starfleet. He's a Bajoran security officer, and Bajor still remains outside of the Federation.
Yeah.
Yes, I get it. He's the security officer on the station that Sisko is running, but this is life. And he is under no obligation to keep this to himself.
But at the same point, Odo is the moral compass here. That's the funny part of it.
I know. Isn't that crazy? He's the one who's showing this is the right thing to do in all cases. And there have been times where we have questioned whether or not his version of right or wrong was correct. But I do like this full circle thing that's happened from the beginning of the series to now with this story.
Off now to Quark's, and Rom is encouraging and coaching Lita and the other Darbo woman to ask Quark for something. And I think, is this the first speaking line from that woman?
I can't remember. Good question. It could be.
Well, they confront Quark, and their demands are that he only take 10% of their tips, not 20. But they're interrupted by another Ferengi who tells Quark there's an incoming transmission from the Grand Nagus. Quark blows them off, saying he'll think about it, and heads off to take the call. They both seem pretty happy that Quark is going to think about it.
At least thinking about it, yeah. Lita's hair looks incredible in this scene. She looks good.
So Quark gets the call from the Nagus, but there's a lot of static on the line, and the Nagus says he can barely see him. In his usual pleasant way, he tells Quark to shut up and listen. He's retiring, and he and Quark's mother are moving to Risa. On the way, he's going to stop at Deep Space Nine to announce his successor. And he tells Quark he's chosen him to be the new Grand Nagus. He starts to say congratulations, but the transmission cuts out before he can say any more. Quark sits down and gasps.
I knew the static on the call had a point. I just didn't know what it was until later.
In the Replimat, between first and second period, Julian literally runs into Ezri, and they're being extremely awkward. He finally kind of asks her out, but she basically is worried that if it doesn't work out, she'll lose Julian as a friend. They both agree that they'll just be friends and shake hands. It's very...
silly.
Yes. And it's sort of... it feels like a Disney teen show.
And I didn't even buy it within the characters. I mean... he said something like he doesn't like to play ridiculous games. Please rewind to season 1 and let's examine the games that Julian used to play. And he even told Miles about it, didn't he? I mean, it might not have been Miles. It might have been Garak way back then. I don't know. He told somebody about it. But yeah, it's not even good just within its own canon. It's baloney.
Yeah.
Also, did you see that Ezri's lunch was like a plate of cottage cheese and apples?
Well, it's moved on from just the sad melon balls.
I love this Star Trek food. before high def is hilarious.
Back to Quark, who's now lying on the bar, surrounded by staff and family. He's very excited about moving into the Grand Nagus' residence and is already making plans. He says he wants to make his greed the shining light to everyone, a testament to the rewards of avarice.
Sure.
I did think it was nice that he wanted his brother, Lita, and Nog, along with the Dabo woman, to move in with him to the Grand Nagus' palace.
Mm-hmm.
To ruin the festivities, into the bar comes Liquidator Brunt. And a nice shot of Morn in the foreground here as well. And it's also funny how everybody in the bar stops and starts watching Brunt and Quark.
Yeah, because nobody likes Brunt.
Quark asks Brunt what brings him here, and Brunt tells him that Ferenginar is rife with rumors that the Nagus is coming to Deep Space Nine to name his successor. Quark tells him, for once, the rumors are right. Brunt replies, I see. Then immediately drops to his knees, grabbing Quark's hand and kissing it, saying, 1,000 congratulations, my Nagus.
Oh my gosh.
This guy really does know how to toady up to the new boss.
He's a true Ferengi, that guy.
It's almost like he's been getting advice from Weyoun.
That's a good point.
Nog, watching this, says, he's not Nagus yet. Brunt holds up a finger at Nog and says, it's never too early to suck up to the boss. Quark, who is obviously enjoying this far too much, says, I think I'm going to like being Nagus. Did you notice the Dabo woman in the back of the scene with the purple and red outfit?
No.
She is wearing this total underboob outfit.
What?
Yes. I was like, what?
No, somehow I missed it.
Very racy for 90s television.
Wow.
Off again to Cardassia. And Weyoun is giving a broadcast on the classic Cardassian propaganda screens we've not seen for ages.
The dudes on the roof are back.
Yes, I was so worried something had happened to them, but no, they're back up there watching it.
And it is totally the same guys.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Weyoun is announcing the rebels were lured to Cardassia and all killed. Damar himself was also killed and shows footage of the Jem'Hadar ship being destroyed. Kira manages to look on the bright side, saying, at least they're not looking for them anymore.
Right.
But Weyoun isn't finished, and he announces they've tracked down and destroyed 18 rebel bases. He says, with the rebellion crushed, nothing can impede our march to final victory. Damar is annoyed, asking how could they have compromised the entire organization? And Kira tells him it doesn't matter how it happened. They now need to just get off Cardassia. They can't use the comms unit as they'd be tracked down in seconds. And she tells him, we've got to do something. We're not going to spend the rest of the war in this cellar, are we? Garak and Damar look totally defeated. They sort of slump down on seats, and Kira asks again, are we? I think the Cardassians are just terrible at losing.
Yeah.
I don't think they have a lot of resilience to things not going their way.
They don't have a lot of good plan Bs.
Good point.
Well, we've arrived at that classic Star Trek moment where all hope is lost.
Everything has just gone wrong.
Yeah. There's no way out. We're never going to win.
I assume the Cardassians, with a rebel army like this, they would be absolutely riddled with people trying to progress their careers by selling out other people.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. And because that's your culture,
right.
That's why your rebellion failed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the station, and Brunt is giving Quark a pedicure. He wants a position as a financial advisor to the Nagus, and eventually he bribes Quark into giving him the role. Brunt then explains how he needs a receipt as bribes are now tax deductible. Quark is horrified that Ferenginar now has taxes, and Brunt explains how now there's a progressive income tax added as part of Zek's reforms. The government needed revenue to pay for the social programs. Brunt now gives Quark a quick rundown of some of Zek's reforms. Quark is horrified, telling him he had no idea things had gotten so bad. He blames Moogie for all of this, for polluting Zek's minds with notions of equality and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Brunt does get a dig in here, saying Quark hasn't been keeping up with the latest reforms. I did kind of like that, because it's pretty obvious Quark doesn't keep up with current events.
Right.
Even though his mother is the financial advisor to the Nagus. Quark wants to change everything back, telling Brunt he'll revoke all these reforms. But Brunt says the Congress of Economic Advisors probably won't approve this. And Quark learns the Nagus is no longer all-powerful. All regulations proposed by the Nagus have to be ratified by the Congress. Brunt assures Quark he'll still be a powerful man, adding, otherwise I wouldn't be sucking up to you.
Yeah.
That was great. Quark then drops to his knees in front of his little Ferengi shrine and says, "Forgive us, blessed Exchequer. Your children have gone astray."
Yeah.
I did kind of like that scene because I thought it wonderfully showed how out of touch Quark was with the rest of the Ferengi.
Mm-hmm.
And I also thought it was interesting because Brunt is totally on board with this and is like, "Oh, can I get a tax receipt?" I thought it showed the difference between someone, even Brunt, who's prepared to roll with the new changes, and Quark, who is like, I don't want anything to change.
Well, Brunt is an opportunist. And I also think, based on what we've seen earlier, even though he was really enjoying the way the Ferengi system used to work, he's also a rule follower.
Oh.
He wants to be the one who's part of it, and he wants to benefit from the rules.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that is. I don't know what that term is for that. Like, I'm going to take full advantage of this situation.
Right.
Meanwhile, Quark's not even paying attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Back again to Cardassia, and the revolutionaries are just hanging out in the basement, lying on their cots.
Moping.
Mila tells them, "If the people could see you now." They're all very despondent, but Mila tells them the people on the streets don't believe Damar is really dead. He's alive. He's been seen in different places on different planets. He's hiding in his secret mountain hideaway. Garak asks, "You never told me you had a secret mountain hideaway." And Damar replies, "I was going to surprise you."
That was funny.
I like the gallows humor.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this story perks Kira's interest, and she asks Damar, "What if we had a bigger impact than we realized? What if we turned you into a legend?" He's the Cardassian Lenalis.
Oh, yeah, she has some experience in that area.
Yeah. She tells him, if Damar, the man they couldn't kill, tells the people of Cardassia to rise up, and Garak continues the thought, saying, then we might have a revolution on our hands. Mila chimes in to add, or you really might get yourselves killed. Damar says, anything is better than rotting in this cellar. How do we begin? And Kira asks, where's the closest Jem'Hadar barracks?
I have 3 things to say about this scene.
Okay, go.
First one, I don't know why, but I absolutely love it.
Oh.
It's all of them sort of moping in the basement.
Yes.
I think in the moment you recognize this as a real turning point because you would absolutely want to give up at this point. But because you know what happens in the future of Star Trek, you know they don't give up.
It's not really in the nature of the show.
No, it's Star Trek, so you know we're at the lowest point and we're going to turn it around. And I just really thought it was funny that the 3 of them were like lying around in the basement because they were literally lying on cots.
It was definitely moping.
Yes, so that's the first thing. And then the second thing I want to say is, in the scene, because she's had a hood on and she's been lying down and they're in this dirty basement. And so Kira's hair is all mussed up. And for the first time this season, her hair looks great. Big improvement. It's not all just hanging on one side.
I admit, I did not notice that.
She actually looks great in this scene. So that's 2.
Oh.
And then the third thing, I love how Kira always has ideas.
Yes.
It makes me wonder on the Gallup scale, is she an idea-ater or a maximizer? I suppose she could be both.
I think she's both.
She never has that, oh, let's just give up attitude, right? That's pretty rare. It's got to be pretty dark, I would think, for her to get there.
I think coming from her background, it makes absolute sense that things go to crap, but you just have to keep on going. She'd already talked about how she'd been in situations where they'd run out of food. They were hiding from Cardassian patrols. Right. Things looked really grim.
It's that scrappy nature when you're not in a position where you have all of the resources that you need and you just have to endlessly come up with ideas to survive.
Yeah.
And you've seen it work in the past. And it's just really on display, I think, with the Cardassians and Kira, because she's always got the next idea and she doesn't want to give up. But Damar and Garak are like, eh.
Well, that, I think, is part of the problem with the Cardassians. You say they don't have a plan B. Kira is someone who lives in what's the next plan if this one doesn't work.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, she's had to. The fact that she survived the occupation proves that.
Yeah. This is just a great scene. It's my favorite scene in the whole episode.
Yes, and I like Kira's realization that maybe they actually had done something more than they thought.
Well, they had no way of knowing. They've had no contact with anybody on Cardassia, and Mila hasn't really been paying much attention until now, so she didn't know either. So they had no evidence. It's quite a leap, but it's a TV show, and you don't have a lot of time. You gotta get moving.
Yeah. Off to the very crispy-looking evil founder woman, and Weyoun is now introducing Legate Broker, the new leader of the Cardassian Union.
I have a bad feeling his reign is going to be quite short. Poor guy.
She announces a new plan that they are falling back, and the Breens seem concerned that this is surrender. But we learn that the Dominion has never surrendered in battle since its founding 10,000 years ago. So it's been around a long time. I have an overanalysis about this later.
Okay. Yeah, it's been around a long time, and we've heard that before. Weyoun said something about 10,000 years once before, I think. Or one of the Vorta. Maybe it wasn't Weyoun.
The new plan is to pull everything back into Cardassian space, which would be easier to defend. Then build more ships and clone more Jem'Hadar until they can go on the offensive again. They're relying on the Federation leaving them alone and not attacking. And she dismisses both the Klingons and the Romulans as no threat to them without the Federation.
Right.
Legate Broker briefly objects to this and then immediately is smacked down and goes into apologetic mode.
Yes.
This is another interesting scene, and I think maybe it shows again the problems with the Founders' mindset. They don't have plan Bs.
Right.
This seems to be the ultimate example of our new plan relies on the enemy doing exactly what we want them to.
Yeah. But so frequently they don't do what you think they're going to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've seen this like in military descriptions of any plan that relies on the enemy cooperating and doing what you want them to do is not a good plan.
Agreed.
I think it's interesting that Broker's the only one who sort of brings this up and immediately is slapped down.
Yeah.
They're living in their own delusion. And I wonder if it's because she's so sick that she's thinking this way. Maybe this has worked for them in the past, and they think so little of the solids that, of course, they're not going to figure a way around this. This is bound to work. We're superior.
Yeah. Well, I had that thought earlier this week when I was just, randomly thinking about this. And it was like, is the sickness, is it starting to impact her decision making?
Yeah.
If she were human, I would say yes. But it's so hard to know because she doesn't have a brain. So we don't really understand how their thoughts work. So could something actually be impacting it? We have no idea. It seems logical that because she's impacted physically, that it could be impacting whatever part of her full makeup makes decisions, right? It's entirely possible. We just have no idea. We're guessing.
It's affecting everything.
Yes, I would say that's one possibility. I think another possibility is everything they ever did in the Gamma Quadrant worked just fine because they didn't have all the alliances to fight against, and so they just keep doing the same thing, thinking it's going to work eventually.
This has always worked in the past.
Another possibility to me is she doesn't have the link. So she's relying only on what she has known so far and what is right in front of her. She doesn't have the opportunity to link with anyone else so that they can get all their collective groupthink going and coming up with some other ideas. Yeah. She doesn't have that. And on top of all of that, she's in a position she's never been in, at least as long as we've known her, which is completely on the defensive.
Yeah.
The wheels are coming off. Not only is she dying, but she is retreating into a little circle where, she's never had to do that before. She had some allies. She lost them because she treated them like dirt. So I'm thinking it could be any of those things, or it could be all of those things that have led her to all of a sudden thinking, wow, this is my idea, so it must be great. This seems like a terrible plan.
Yeah, and this is where I think the Vorta becomes such a problem.
Right.
They revere you as a god.
Because they just agree. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't even bring up are you sure this is a good idea? These are the things that could go wrong with your plan.
Right. We take no ideas from anyone. We're not open to that. I'm sure we've talked about that on here before about poor leadership being you're convinced you're the smartest person in the room.
Right.
First of all, that's probably not true. But secondly, if you're surrounded by people who are just dumber than you, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
I feel like we could do a whole leadership podcast about the failure of the founders.
Maybe that's something we'll add on the end.
I like that. A whole episode devoted to leadership.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Okay, that could be a plan.
Who do we hire to just go and listen to every episode and tell us which ones we talked about leadership in? Because I'm not going to do it.
If we were in Hollywood, this is where your interns would come in useful.
It's like 175 hours of podcasts.
Exactly.
Which is insanity.
Get the intern on it.
Yikes.
Back to the station, and Quark is in basically ranting mode. He's complaining to Rom about how the new Congress has even passed laws making monopolies illegal. Rom, meanwhile, just keeps asking him about what he wants to do with the bar. Quark, finally annoyed, says, "Sell it. What would I want with it anymore?" Rom replies, "I'll give you 5,000 bars of latinum for it." And Quark says, "That's reasonable."
That was a shocker.
Quark continued to rant about various things, including their people losing their way and they're not teaching children the rules of acquisition anymore.
What was cool was how every time he says something, Rom has a counterpoint of just saying, well, here's why it's good. Like when he says you can't harass workers anymore, and Rom says, unharassed workers are productive workers.
Yes.
Here, sign here.
It's wonderful that Quark isn't paying any attention to what Rom's telling him.
No.
Well, throughout all the ranting, Rom manages to get Quark's thumbprint and confirm the sale.
Mm-hmm.
Quark suddenly realizes he didn't even haggle, saying even he's gone soft. Rom says he prefers Quark this way.
Me too. That was a cute scene. Yeah.
Now going full ranty, Quark says, "This disease needs to be stopped. The Negus needs to let me do things my way, or I'll turn down the job."
He's going to make Ferenginar great again.
Yes. He says he will not preside over the demise of the Ferengi civilization.
Aye.
The line has to be drawn here, this far and no further. This was a total nod at Picard's rant in First Contact.
100%, because he's even got a little bit of an accent when he says it. I mean, that was funny.
I was laughing my head off at that.
Yeah. I feel like it's necessary to point out, and maybe it isn't, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Yes.
But the past is not better for people who were oppressed. I mean, he's clearly trying to go back in time.
Yeah.
If it's not better for the people being oppressed, it's not better for anyone.
Cut back to Cardassia, with Kira and Damar hiding in a street. Kira is dressed like a Jedi, as is the tradition.
And again, she looks great.
And we see Garak leaving a building, which I assume is the barracks, but he's stopped by two Jem'Hadar who demand to see his work order. Garak starts trying to bluff his way out, and it's not going well. And Kira tells Damar the detonator only had a 3-minute delay.
Now, where did we get a bomb?
Good question.
Kira just threw one together with stuff she found in the basement.
I would imagine somebody like Kira knows how to make an effective improvised explosive.
Yep.
Kira says they need to do something, and Damar just walks straight out into the street and distracts the Jem'Hadar, who recognize who he is. Kira shoots one with a phaser, and Garak knifes the other one in the throat. Very grisly.
Oh, yeah. In the throat. Oy.
Damar now shouts at the civilians to get back, even pushing some to the ground as the barracks explodes. And we get slow-motion shots of explosions and NPCs flying around. In the aftermath, they've all survived, and Damar gets to his feet. A young Cardassian civilian sees him and says, "It's Damar, he's alive." And then Damar starts a speech telling them, "The Dominion told you the rebellion has been crushed, but that is yet another lie." And he calls on Cardassians everywhere to rise up, saying, "I need you to be my army. Freedom is ours for the taking." And very skillfully, Garak chooses this moment and shouts, "Freedom!" starting a chant from the crowd. I can't help looking at the civilians and thinking, oh, they're all dead.
Yeah, as long as the Jem'Hadar are around.
Yeah. Kira, watching this from the shadows, dressed in a Jedi outfit, quietly slips away. Off again to the station, and Ezri and Julian get on the turbo lift for their first day of class, and when it arrives in ops, they're kissing. Mars and Worf just look down at each other, and Worf presses the button to delete this scene, sending the turbo lift back down.
Again, I don't want to state the obvious, but you're at work. They're both on duty. They're in their place of work where other people are working. Don't do that.
No, I just think they're going to their first class of this semester, of this Disney high school comedy.
Don't do that.
In the Quarks, they're waiting for the Negus, and there's much excitement at his arrival. As Zek walks into the bar, Quark stops him, saying, "They need to talk." And immediately Moogie chimes in, saying, "I knew you were going to make this difficult." He tells them, "If you want me to be the Negus, you're going to have to let me do things my way." Moogie and Zek, in a classic comedy moment, both turn and look at each other. And then Moogie asks, "Who wants you to be Negus?"
Brent.
Zek just pushes Quark out of the way, marching over to Rom and saying, "Congratulations, Rom, you're going to make a fine Negus." Zek looks very confused, saying, "What's wrong with you? You look very happy when I talked to you the other day."
Wait, because when he says that, Rom says, "Did I?" Dude, it never happened. That made me laugh.
Quark pipes up that it was him. Zek just says, "Oh, I thought it was you. It must have been all the static. Oh, I'm glad we cleared that up."
Yeah, no problem.
Zek says to Rom, "A new Ferenginar needs a new kind of Negus. A kinder, gentler Negus. And that's you, my boy." He mentions the waters of the great material continuum and hands Rom the Negus' scepter. Very humbly, Rom replies, "I'll do the best I can." Brunt immediately rushes up to be the first to congratulate Rom, and Tiny Rom pushes him out the way.
My hairdo. Tiny Ron, yes.
Quark, who's watched this whole thing, says, "All right, you want Rom? You can have him. You deserve him. He's perfect for this new workers' paradise. He can save the environment and levy all the taxes he wants." The Negus turns to Moogie saying, "He's not taking it very well."
No.
Another piece I laughed out loud at. Quark continues to complain, saying, "The Ferenginar I know doesn't exist anymore." And then says, "Wait, but it will exist. Right here in this bar. This establishment will be the last outpost of what made Ferenginar great. The unrelenting lust for profit." He's totally on a roll now and orders Broik to water the drinks and for Ampella to rig the Darbo table. And then says, "Rom, I want to buy back the bar." That so made me laugh. After all his ranting and insulting Rom, calling him an idiot, he realizes he doesn't own the bar anymore and has to ask to buy it back.
Yeah.
Rom says he can have the bar and even keep the 5,000 bars of latinum because you're my brother.
You shouldn't have done that. Should have just said, "You can continue to manage the bar, but you work for me."
Yeah.
Shouldn't have done that.
Quark, true to form, says, "And you're an idiot, but I love you." And then, almost with disdain in his voice, says, "Congratulations, you're the perfect Negus for the new Ferenginar." Continuing the comedy, Zek turns to Moogie and asks, "Are you sure we picked the right brother?"
Yes.
Moogie just takes his hand and says, "Come, my dear, Ricer is waiting." Zek wishes Rom good luck, "'cause you're gonna need it." And then Moogie tells Rom she's proud of him, and they leave.
Oh.
Rom, again being the best brother ever, tells Quark he does need a financial advisor. But Quark replies, "It's not going to be me." And immediately, Brunt literally pops up in the scene and says, "I know someone who's available."
That was funny.
Nog hustles Brunt away, and Leela follows them, leaving Rom holding the Negus staff, who quietly says, "Wow."
It's nice that we bring something full circle here with Nog, because Nog finally gets to see his father getting something that is greater than what Quark has.
Yes.
So he's seen him succeed in his position that he was in, but this is different. This is something that Quark has always sort of longed for and respected.
Right.
And now it's Rom. So I thought that was cool.
Well, it's the progression of the whole character of Rom from basically someone who's regarded as an idiot and not worth anything. Even from that first episode where Rom actually, remember, he picks the locks and then explains to Quark that he's always been able to pick the locks because when Quark goes away, he has to be able to get at the safe.
He has to do it. Yeah, I remember.
And now, because of the reforms that have happened on Ferenginar, you need someone who is open to different ideas and is prepared to, learn and expand. And Nog's the perfect example.
Although just because he's a great engineer doesn't mean he's going to be a great leader. I think we've seen that in the real world. So he is going to need some trusted advisors around him. So hopefully it's not Brunt.
Fortunately, he has Lita.
He does have Lita, yeah. I didn't understand in the scene, why is Nog out of uniform? He's not in uniform for this entire episode.
Oh, well, he's not needed on the new Defiant.
That doesn't make sense, right? He should be on the Defiant.
Maybe he's got some personal time.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe to deal with this Negus thing, he took a couple days off because his grandmother was coming.
Oh, that's true.
But in a war, that just seemed weird.
Sisko's a pretty nice commander. He might have given him some time off. Well, there is the other side of it as well, which is the Federation does want to maintain good relations with the Ferengi. Certainly now at the time of war. And the Negus' chief financial advisor is his grandmother. It's probably good politics to make sure Nog's there. He's the representation of the Federation. Have some time off. See your grandmother. Get the Grand Negus to cut some business deals for us. Yeah,
I'll accept the reason that he's there and they would want him to be there for the Negus, but I would think they would want him in uniform. That just seems weird.
Yeah. Okay.
But he's on vacation. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Did you notice when Zek is saying the things about the Negus having to navigate the water of the great material continuum and the thing about seeking the strong winds of prosperity?
Avoid the shoals of bankruptcy.
Yes. Did you notice when he was doing that Moogie next to him is mouthing the words along with him?
Oh, I didn't.
Now, I will headcanon this.
Okay, go.
Obviously, the actress could have just accidentally done that because she memorized all the lines and, she's only in a couple of scenes and she could have just done it. Could have just happened by accident. But perhaps they're trying to show us that she is still controlling things and that she actually wrote these lines for Zek and that they practiced them. And she was just sort of saying it along with him because that's what was going on before they got there.
I didn't see it, but we've already shown that Zek is suffering from the memory loss and is not the man he was. And I think that Moogie is basically being that support structure for him.
It's super obvious. So you should watch it. You can really see it.
Gosh, I
and it's not just like one word.
Yeah.
I didn't see it the first time, but I saw it the second time.
Well, that would give the indication that she's practiced it with him. So maybe he's even worse than he was earlier.
Yep, maybe. See, I'm bringing new things to you.
That's a very good one. It's also sad to see somebody decline that quickly.
Yeah, totally.
Off to a briefing with Admiral Ross, Martog, and a Romulan. He's laying out how the Dominion has retreated from all Federation, Klingon, and Romulan space and has formed a new defense perimeter. Ross points out that they'll need a major offensive to break their lines. The Romulan wants to just keep them contained, but Sisko tells him that's what they want them to do. Give them time to rebuild their forces. Martog has the right plan. He wants to hit them now with everything. Ross isn't too keen on this, but Sisko points out they'll be sitting rebuilding for 5 years, and then God help them when they come out. Ross agrees with Martog's plan to attack, and the Romulan finally agrees too. A stern Sisko says, "It's settled. Then we attack."
Although the good news is the founder woman wouldn't survive that 5 years.
Yeah, that's true. What would they do after that?
Their only leader would be gone.
Yeah.
Martog, by the way, is wearing his fancy new robes.
The boss robes.
He went from he didn't deserve it to oh yeah, I like this. It fits.
Hey, this fits really well.
Mm-hmm. I could wear it to a meeting.
In Sisko's quarters, Cassidy has been waiting up for him, and she seems a little distracted. Sisko asks what's wrong, and she announces, "I'm pregnant." Ben seems overjoyed, as we know he loves kids.
Yeah.
It was unplanned, and Sisko says, "It's wonderful." But Cassidy is concerned. She brings up how the prophets warned him that marrying her will bring him sorrow, and asks, what if they were trying to tell you something, that something could happen to our baby? She is very upset by this.
I'm with her. I would also be worried.
Sisko tells her, nothing is going to happen to our baby. She asks if he's sure, and Ben replies, almost whispering, "I am the emissary of the prophets, and I know nothing is going to happen. Everything is going to be all right." Cassidy says, "I hope you're right." And he holds Cassidy in his arms and says, "We're going to have a baby." And Cassidy replies, "A baby." But as we fade, we see Sisko looks very, very serious. The end.
I am very worried about this baby and all of them because we know sorrow is coming. Although I really wish they would discuss the fact that maybe all the prophets meant was that they would eventually have to part through death or whatever.
Yeah.
Because all relationships end in sorrow. And then maybe they wouldn't worry about it. But I agree with her. I would also be worried about that.
It would be very concerning, especially when God has actually directly given you a warning.
Totally.
Although, let's look at this kid. Your grandma is a god, a prophet to the Bajorans. And your grandfather tried to overthrow the Federation in 2293.
Oh, God, we're back to that. Where's Atiba when I need him? And you skipped the part in the scene about the birth control. Are we going to talk about that?
Yes. Okay, straight into overanalysis.
Okay, yes, let's do it.
So in 300 years, contraception hasn't gotten any better?
That's exactly what my notes say. It's 300 years in the future. Surely you don't need to go to Julian to get it done. And also, why do you both need to do it?
Oh.
I'm happy we're at least saying the man could be involved. That's an advancement. But, I mean, at least they're both happy. Well, she's worried, but...
she's concerned.
She's not unhappy to be pregnant, yeah.
Next thing, really 10,000 years. Is that Vorta mythology? Is that the founders telling the Vorta things like, oh, we've been around for 10,000 years, we've never surrendered, we've never been defeated?
Yeah.
I feel, my personal feeling on this, it's propaganda. It's the Dominions version of the 1,000-Year Reich.
Well, we've certainly heard the 10,000 years before, but that doesn't mean it's not propaganda. I mean, we have to believe that the Vorta went through some kind of an evolution, so I guess it would be a long time.
Well, not necessarily. Julian's just one generation away from a regular human.
That's true.
So if you kept on modifying the DNA, fairly quickly you could probably get the Vorta, I would think.
It might almost make sense if they started taking over that long ago, because then you might believe that they held this iron fist for so long without really having to do anything super complicated like what they're having to do now in the Alpha Quadrant.
Oh.
They've basically stunted the evolution of an entire quadrant, which is all they really ever wanted. So it's all their dreams came true in those 10,000 years.
All we ever wanted is just to hold everybody down.
Really, what they should have done and maybe this is something to talk about in our series wrap up, but they should have destroyed the wormhole and just kept to themselves, kept their quadrant. I don't know why they didn't do that. I guess because they knew that they had some other changelings out in that quadrant.
I have a headcanon for that. It's because they see everybody else as a threat.
Yeah, they never thought this wouldn't work.
They look at every other race as both inferior and as a potential threat to them.
Yeah, so I guess we just don't know. 10,000 years is possible, but propaganda also possible.
Right. Next thing, opinion piece. Is Rom a good choice for a more progressive Negus?
I mean, are we being honest? Because my answer is going to be no.
Honest, yes.
I just don't think... Look, a big part of leadership is PR.
Yeah.
And it would be tough if Rom is incapable of speaking eloquently. Like in that scene where he was chasing Quark around and Quark would say something bad that had happened and then Rom immediately replied with, well, this is why that thing is good. That Rom, I do think, could do it. Because he seems to understand all these things and maybe he's learned that in his time on the station and he's learned to be able to just say those sorts of things out loud. And maybe it's just Quark who doesn't listen to him.
Oh, it's definitely Quark doesn't listen to him. Quark doesn't look at him as having any real value.
But they really play up his inability to sort of get his point across and making bad, quick decisions unless it's in engineering. Yeah. So I don't have a lot of confidence that he can do it. And there's not going to be a lot of interest or respect for Lita out of the gate. So I think it would be quite difficult.
Oh, because she's not a Ferengi.
And she's a woman. You don't just get rid of sexism in a couple of, well, even years at this point. It doesn't happen.
Well, months from the sound of it.
Well, I mean, how long Moogie has been there is what I'm saying.
That's true.
That's not gone. That base isn't gone. There are a lot of people like Quark who are still on Ferenginar.
Yeah. Maybe that's why the Negus said, you'll need it.
I mean, I think it's a great choice for the show, but in reality, I'm not sure he's the right choice, no.
It's the most Star Trek choice.
I wouldn't pick Quark either.
Quark doesn't even keep up with events happening on Ferenginar.
Yes, exactly. He doesn't even know what's going on. He wants to go back to the way things were. It's just like, hey, dude.
Quark's very much the model of the golden ager. There was this golden age where everything was great.
Yeah.
The irony of that, I think, is with Quark. How much was Quark in debt? Quark wasn't a great Ferengi. Maybe part of the reason why the Ferengi are going along with the reforms, or the reforms are working, is the fact that most Ferengi really aren't the business people that they think they are.
Right.
That part of the myth of the Ferengi being good at business is the fact that they're actually terrible at business.
Right.
And there are only a limited number of them who really benefit from it.
Oh, so it's America.
Oof. So you think they're cool hustlers and they can all win and all make the big money. But the majority of them, the majority of the Ferengi really are terrible at it. Look at Nog. I look at Nog as the example of the first Ferengi we saw on the show to actually look at the Ferengi world and go, wow, that sucks. I want to do something else with my life.
Because they play it for laughs all the time. And so many times when we've talked about it, when you dig deeply into it, it just doesn't make any sense and it doesn't work. But if instead you say, okay, it's not a joke, what it really is a deep critique of a capitalistic society.
Hyper-capitalist, yeah.
It has sort of a different flavor because you literally could compare it in many ways to America, which is frightening.
Maybe that was their intention.
Maybe it was. they shouldn't have then played it for so much humor and sort of made fun of all the terrible stuff they said and did about women because it wasn't funny. But if you could get to the point where you're looking at it as a criticism, that would be differently. But they never did it that way. And so it's difficult to evaluate it now after 170 some episodes and all of a sudden say, oh no, what this really was a critique of hypercapitalism. Maybe that's how we have to accept it. But I don't think that's really what it was.
It's the best they were able to write.
Right.
Next thing, and I think we really covered this, the founder and her fortress mentality, the problems with that. We think we beat that one to death.
Well, the only thing I would ask about on that topic, and I had this in my notes, is this some kind of a strategy or technique from history, or did we just make that up on this show? Because I don't know.
Well, typically fortress mentalities haven't worked terribly well because
you're out of options.
Yeah, well, and the other side is, do you have all the resources you require to build more ships, to build more Jem'Hadar, to manufacture...
Just within your fortress.
Yeah, within your fortress. Yeah. And plus, let's say they can build 100 ships a month, a week, whatever. Can the Federation, can the Romulans, can the Klingons build 100 a week as well? So you end up with a situation of, I can, behind my lines, behind my nice walls, I can build this huge army, these huge number of ships, while my enemies do exactly the same thing. So you sort of self-defeat.
Yeah, that's a good point. At
the same time, your enemies can't attack you. You're not attacking them. Do they have wider resources? Do they run a risk of bringing more planets into the Federation, building another alliance?
Making themselves even stronger, cutting you off even more from the founders in the other quadrant.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Again, we've seen the founders don't care about looking at history because they're always right.
Yeah. And what about the Ketracel White?
Oh, we just wave our hands at that and it appears.
Is that ever going to come up again? Because I would believe you don't have the ability to produce that within your fortress.
Right.
We really stopped talking about that a long time ago.
Well, we stopped talking about it after they blew up the Ketracel White facility.
And then they didn't know what to do about it in the story. Oh.
I think that was one of those, we've painted ourselves into a corner. Therefore, we deny the corner exists.
And we really don't want to wrap up this war till the end of the season. Yeah. So we're just going to ignore that. Yeah. That's a big mistake, I think. Dropping that part of the story. Yeah. I mean, it was such an important part of it. And then, never mind.
Yeah.
I have a headcanon way out of it.
Okay, go. I want to hear it.
The Alpha Jem'Hadars either don't need it, need less of it, or the thing that they do need, they are able to manufacture in their fortress.
That would be a good way of doing it. That they need significantly less.
Yeah, maybe.
Because they still need some for control. Because remember all the way back, the Wayun made the comment to Sisko about that, there are some cracks. They need it to keep the Jem'Hadar loyal.
That's right, yeah.
I think that was the episode where he said the
10,000 years?
Yeah.
All right, what else you got?
That actually wraps up my overanalysis. I did not have a lot of points this week.
Well, I mostly have questions.
Oh, okay, go.
In the opening scene, when they're talking about waiting for someone, before we knew it was the Defiant.
Yes.
Or the Sao Paulo.
Hammer the Emissary.
When they say, they're here or something, I can't remember exactly when it happened, but there's a guy who beams into Ops behind Miles.
Oh, yes, I remember seeing that.
And I thought, that's who we're waiting for. Maybe they were trying to trick us, but it was some random red shirt guy, and we never saw him again. He, wandered off. It's like, who is that guy?
Oh, yeah. Why was he beaming in?
Yeah, it was weird. Okay, here's my first question.
Go.
How did they find all of the rebel bases? Is that seriously all that treachery that you were talking about? But was it because Gul Rusat wouldn't listen to Kira? Remember, Kira kept telling him, stop talking about the people and stop talking about the bases because somebody will get captured and give it all away.
I think that is exactly it. Part of the problem is they kept on behaving in that way. Using names.
And not listening to the Bajoran.
Not listening to how you run these things and the proper techniques. And even though Damar said they encrypted all their communications and did everything, how many of them were going, we won't do it this time? Because in that episode, remember, we saw how they checked the box. They didn't place the device in the correct spot.
They wouldn't listen to the detail. Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe that's part of the problem of the Cardassians are terrible at actually following detailed procedures like that.
Yeah.
So even though they convinced themselves, we're completely secure, from maybe the Vorta standpoint, they're getting all this information in and going, these guys are idiots. We know where everything is.
Wow, yeah.
And plus, talking about the treachery, maybe it's as simple as finding one of the officers who's been approached by them, or telling one of the officers, I'll get you a big promotion if you pretend to infiltrate the organization and give us all the info. And they look at I'll be somebody important on Cardassia.
Maybe Broca was actually one of the rebels in the early days.
Yeah, exactly.
And then used it to get promoted.
Right. And if you can appeal to people that way, then that's a big problem.
Well, they're a mess, the Cardassians.
Very
I think
much
they were
so.
a mess before, but they're much worse now.
I think that comes down to what I've always said about them. They were an empire where it was paint over rust.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, and along the same lines, how did the Dominion find out about the Federation's countermeasure to their big weapon? They can't have founders in Starfleet anymore because they're all sick. They wouldn't be able to maintain their shape that long, I wouldn't think, without being seen. So it can't be that.
I bet they just have paid traders.
Oh, just paid traders.
Yeah.
But in Starfleet.
Well, the Klingons and the Romulans would have known about it. So if they're retrofitting other ships. So it must have sneaked out.
Probably the Romulans, I'm going to go with.
Well, I'm thinking that it was one of the contractors at one of the shipyards.
Oh, man. Can't trust anybody.
Exactly. It is the kind of thing, though, that something that big, that important, and potentially involving retrofits to thousands of ships, that nobody's going to figure it out, or the Dominion's not going to learn to it. Because if all of a sudden you're having ships called in to have modifications made, any good intelligence officer will look at that and go, every single ship is getting this. This is interesting. Something's up.
Well, then they did a pretty crappy job of taking advantage of the fact that they had a weapon that most of the fleet couldn't resist.
Well, that's
the biggest flaw.
I mean, they outnumbered the Klingons 15-1.
Yeah, because the bad guys never win. It's TV.
Oh, true.
Well, we've already covered the strategy of the founder woman at the end there, so I'll skip that one. I think the last thing I'll say in this section is that I thought it was kind of a bummer that we didn't take the opportunity to show Odo learning that Damar was presumed dead.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to also presume Kira dead at that point.
Oh, gosh, that's a really good point.
And they didn't talk about it at all. I mean, and they've got no way of communicating. They pointed that out in the episode. So there's no way they have no way of knowing that she's alive.
Yeah, that would really upset Odo.
Exactly. Yeah. So if he knew that, or knew that false truth, and found out that the Federation had tried to wipe out all of his people.
Ooh, that would not go very well.
Based on Odo's history, he would have had a crazy reaction. Remember, he stopped joining the cult because of Kira. You tell me he's not going back to the cult if Kira's dead.
I have possibly an explanation for that.
Okay.
Strictly speaking, Kira is missing in action, or she is still on the mission. They do not know the status of her.
It's true. He would need confirmation, probably.
Yeah. So you might not assume, because she's such a survivor, that she's been killed in this. And plus, the other side of it is, how do you know it's not just Dominion lies?
Yes, of course. But it would have been nice to at least have a reaction scene or something, or show him worried.
I think from a story point of view, yes, it would have been a great thing to show that sort of conflict with Odo.
Right.
Or the concern from him that Kira was killed.
Well, I'm going to go to women in the future, and there's not a lot to say in this section.
Okay.
Ezri making out with someone in their place of work is a bad look for women everywhere. Pull it together. And I suppose that, as we said earlier, it is an advancement that a man can now get an injection and be involved in birth control somehow, or at least in unwanted pregnancies somehow. It doesn't hold water that they would both need it. It's like they couldn't quite decide. Like, they didn't want to commit that the man could just get the injection.
Oh.
I'll let it go. And there's no reason to get worked up about it. Because like I said, I recognize it as an advancement. Okay, let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute thumbs up. I did very much enjoy this episode. I really like the way the story is progressing and what's happening with both the war and what's happening on Cardassia. The Rom and Negus side, I like the way that wraps up. Rom's journey, I thought, was very satisfying to see him in that position.
Agreed.
And Ferenginar
Yeah.
trying to become something more.
And Nog being able to see his father
Yes.
get something that he deserves. Yeah.
Right. The Ezri Julian thing, I find it creepy and disturbing thinking about. Seriously, I find that sort of, is he taking advantage of someone who's emotionally compromised? It just makes it creepy.
Bashir's a creep. Sorry, people. Bashir's a creep.
It does not work. I do like, and I don't think we've really seen it before, this sort of funny relationship with Miles and Worf. The two of them sort of being able to play off each other.
Agreed.
But overall, this episode, enjoyable, a thumbs up, a great prelude to the final episode.
A hot take that nobody wants and might get me canceled. Bashir's a creep and Siddiq is the worst actor of the cast. You can argue he had the worst material, but...
He has not had great material, and they have not really known what to do with that character.
I just couldn't disagree more. I think he's terrible. Well, she wasn't part of the main cast. I was going to say Jennifer was the worst. She was the worst actor on this show, but...
You have never let that go.
I did say it on the main cast. I got to put that on the list. I have a list of things we never let go, and I really got to put Jennifer on that list.
Poor Jennifer.
I will also give it a thumbs up, apart from the Julian and Ezri stuff, which is a total waste of time. It's a good episode, and we kind of tied a bow on the Ram and Lita story. We gave Nog a bit of a happy ending for his dad, and I thought that was really good. And it wasn't even super offensive, you know, the Ferengi part.
Yeah.
I think they did a good job. And that scene where the Negus and Moogie appear, that scene is actually quite funny. I did laugh, and quite frequently, I do not find the Ferengi stuff funny, so I enjoyed that. And all the other stuff was good. And I also really liked all of the scenes, really, with Kira, Garak, and Damar. I thought those were really good, especially the one, though, where they were all just laying on the cots going, oh, it's the end. I thought that was great.
We're stuck in this basement for the rest of the war.
Yes, so a good penultimate episode.
Agreed.
So then I'll move on to some of the surprises for me.
Oh, yes. Very important.
I was 100% convinced we would learn Garak's nanny is his mother. It still might be true, I guess, but...
Possible.
He's so respectful of her, treats her so well, is concerned about her in so many ways.
Yeah.
It's strange, but I guess she's a mother figure at the very least. But it just seems funny how he's like deferential with her. It's cute.
Yeah, he's very polite.
I had already heard that Ram became Negus. I heard that a long time ago.
Oh.
I was surprised it took until this long, I guess, to get to that.
I might have told you that back in the day.
Oh, you might have, but I've seen pictures of him with the Grand Negus thing. And I mean, admittedly, I thought maybe I heard it wrong because it didn't make a lot of sense. But that wasn't a big surprise to me. The Sisko baby is very much a surprise.
I was hoping you did not know that one.
Complete surprise. I've never heard that. It definitely makes me worry about Cassidy's future and the baby's future, for sure, based on the whole sorrow thing that we know is coming. I think those were the big surprises in this episode.
What about the Defiant?
I didn't know the Defiant came back, and I guess it didn't really. It's just another Defiant-class ship that they renamed. But I didn't I didn't know that the Defiant got blown up and then that they got it again before the season ended.
Yeah.
So we don't normally watch the next episode on the day that we record, but we got to go watch how this ends. All we've got left.
Yeah, you've been ready for that for like the last week.
Yeah. Definitely, because I watched this episode a week ago, and it's like, can I watch the next one? No, don't want to do it. That's not how we operate.
Oh, yeah, this will be good.
All right, so that wraps up Season 7, Episode 24. Come back next week for 25. We might do it in a two-parter. We will see. I won't say it's the last episode, but the Episode 25 of Deep Space Nine is the last one. So I've only got one episode of New Star Trek to me left.
Wow.
Which is shocking that we have arrived here.
It has been one of the greatest journeys of Western civilization.
It's the thing old people say. I can't believe how time goes so fast.
It would be less annoying if it wasn't true.
Yes. All right, so we've covered everything except to say, remember, we're going to rebrand our podcast as ReBingeIT, and I will let you know in one of these episodes when that is up and running and you can connect to it. But for now, we'll remain here. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at rebingeit@gmail.com, or you can hit us up on what used to be called Twitter, also Threads, also Instagram. We are ReBingeIT on all of those. And on YouTube, we are ReBingeIT. And of course, you can connect to us through facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.